With Ellie Mina, a registered parliamentarian, consulting board effectiveness all across the country with nonprofit, private, and of course local government, which is our focus today. And Ellie, just here we are in 2019, and in the last year, 7 areas in the country, provinces or territories, had elections. From Ontario to BC to Yukon, Northwest Territories, Manitoba, etc. And of course, these people didn't join a group. We didn't say, hey, we like that. These new people just got put together.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing on average is around a 50% turnover on councils. So, So, I want to talk about how a group comes together to do all the work that they're supposed to do, strategy and policy, and the importance of creating a culture, I guess, if you will, of working together. I know teams gets overused. So let's go there. Let's talk about building a culture for a council to be effective.
And it's a great discussion. I always remember the time I was interviewed by a client and being brought in as a parliamentarian and a potential parliamentarian. So they asked me some questions about Robert's Rules of Order, but at some point one of them said, can you tell us the impact of culture or the significance of culture in the context of group decision making? And that was in 2002. I wasn't quite sure, but gradually, as I was continuing to work with that group, I got a sense of what it was. I'll give you one example of it. My best answers are in the form of a story. And this one came up I was observing a mayor and council I was the next speaker, and someone else was speaking ahead of me to them. It was their orientation. It's a brand new council. Right. Most of them haven't been on council before. And the individual speaking to them ahead of me was saying a few things, and he would punctuate his comments from time to time by saying, if you do this, it would really help you get reelected. And then a few minutes later, the same thing. Don't do that because you get in the way of you getting re-elected. And in the back of the room, I resist the temptation to begin to roll my eyes because I just want to be respectful. But at some point, the mayor interrupted him and said, sir, I need to interrupt you because I just want to clarify for me, and I believe my colleagues, getting re-elected is absolutely the last thing on our mind. What we want to do is make a difference. There's some problems in the community that we want to work with the community and solve together. We want to leave a good legacy of decisions. So getting re-elected is the last thing that we're thinking about. And I was almost thinking, let's applaud the individual. So the culture, and that was established right at the beginning, is the culture of service. It's not about me getting re-elected. It's about us working together, pooling our talents and our wisdom, and serving the community that we love. So that's culture. In many councils, that's not the case. In many councils, unfortunately, people get on one side, on another side, they end up attacking each other. And so we're not looking at the community and what we can do together for that community. I think culture of service, the way I describe it is this: if we can shift from one radio station to another one, the one to shift away from is WIIFM, what's in it for me, getting re-elected, compared to what's in it for them, WIIFT, and thinking about it in terms of serving, making a difference. To me, that's critical.
Yeah. So service, number
service is one. And another one that I like is the word is team, T-E-A-M. And someone who was working with a First Nation, and an individual told me team is an abbreviation. Together, everyone achieves more. The story that was with that is a mayor who was being interviewed shortly after the evening of the post-election. Right. And the reporter said to her something like this: congratulations, getting elected. It was a tight race. You won. Congratulations. What are the most important priorities that you will make a difference over the next 4 years? And I think a lot of mayors would, and I think have seen, I will deal with homelessness. I will do the I. The problem with the I is that it's me. Her response was most refreshing. She said, the first and most important priority is to get the team together to learn how to set priority, to work with the staff team and bring them in so we function in our respective role, and that is my most important first priority.
Nice.
So it's interesting. She wasn't thinking about her. It wasn't thinking about me alone.
Right.
It was my most important job is to build a team, as opposed to unilaterally say this is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So I think reflecting the team means talking like that, means functioning like that. And by the way, one of the questions people ask about the concept of a team, some political leaders have told me the word team and political settings do not go together, because agreeing with people all the time means that we are weak.
Right.
So this is what I'm saying. Being in a team does not mean that we take unanimous votes all the time.
Right.
It does not mean that we get to the lowest common denominator and our decisions have no backbone. It does not mean that. In fact, in a good team, a dissenting voice is valued and appreciated because the individual has the courage to tell us something that we may not be wanting to hear.
And the safety to do that.
Yeah, so
Right.
we want to celebrate dissenting opinion, and that is what a team is, meaning that we have distinctly different pieces of the puzzle. Some of them initially may seem like they conflict with one another, but we want to, again, listen and learn from it and function as a team of learners.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important part of culture, and unfortunately in some settings, in some political settings, some individuals decide, oh, I'm going to be the official opposition,
Right.
and they keep on attacking their colleagues after the meeting, speaking to the media and telling them, I'm the only one who voted against, and I'm the only one who's smart. So it just breaks the team. It reduces the trust and respect within the team, and in the end, reduces the capacity for the municipality, because we don't function as a team. Again, a team does not mean that we always agree with one another. No.
Yeah.
So that's second part too.
Yeah. Number 3.
Number 3 is...
I think you had 4.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about is learning, the culture of learning. But one way for me to share that with you is, again, through a story. It was a session that I was doing for a municipality, and during a break, one of the counselors comes and talks to me. And he says this. He says, it is my understanding, just joined the council, the 7 of us, that the most important number that I have to think about is 4. If 4 of us, of 7, think the same way, have the same priorities in mind, we really don't need to worry much what the 3 are thinking, because we have the numbers to pass any motion that we want. And I had to think about that, both as a parliamentarian and as a practitioner. As a parliamentarian, this is what I had to say to him. 2 thoughts. From a parliamentary perspective, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Because 4 to 3, the math works. Mm-hmm. Because 4 in favor, 3 against, you don't listen to them, you don't care about them. You have the numbers, you can say arrogantly that we can pass whatever motion we want. But there's another math. And the math of the jigsaw puzzle comes in. Do we have all the pieces of the puzzle in order to make a fully informed decision? And what happens if some of those pieces of the puzzle happen to reside in the heads of the 3?
Right.
And we automatically decided we don't need to worry about them, means we're not listening to them.
Yeah.
So that to me is just another thing, a culture of learning, meaning that regardless of what individual's position may be, we still want to listen and learn, and we leave ourselves the ability to change our mind based on the discussion.
Right.
So learning means also not making those promises ahead of the meeting. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, whenever I think about this being done in secret, like you talk to another one and say, vote with me, I vote with you, you trade a vote. Sometimes you hear this story.
Yeah.
Individual who, when we were talking about coming to a meeting with an open mind, not empty mind, but open mind, he said, I have the story for you. I was at a council meeting. The council meeting came and then it was adjourned. All the business was dealt with, and one of the councillors stands up and yells out at his colleague across the room, top of his voice, you promised you will vote with me and you didn't. You should be ashamed of yourself. So for a change, we had someone who came into the meeting with an open mind, not an empty mind. They had some biases, but he listened, made a different decision, and this individual is shaming him in public. Right. It's a problem. It, unfortunately, it's way too common in the political world when people think about pushing through an outcome and make deals with one another in advance of the meeting. And the public knows that. Mm-hmm. the public can tell when people's minds are being made up, and the trust and respect is going down,
Yeah.
and the transparency is all by diminished. So
Yeah.
it's food for thought.
Yeah.
It should be about learning, not
Yeah.
about pushing an outcome.
Yeah, I think the contrary is learning versus winning and losing, right? Yeah, yeah. What's number 4?
Yeah. So,
You got 4?
Oh, I have 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
I often got asked as a parliamentarian about the question is a quorum. What do we do when we do not have a quorum in a meeting? So my answer is simple. Robert's rules and common, I guess, if the legislation requires a certain number of members to be voting members to be in the room while the decision is made. If we don't have that, the group has no power to make a decision. And so people tell me, well, what if this, what if that? What can we do? You have to have the numbers in the room in order to make a decision. So this is what happens. By the way, the word is, instead of the Q word, we look at a different word. And I need to tell you what that word is. Sometimes with citizens' committees, let's say council gathered a group of citizens and they want some input on issues, basically community-based input. Some of them come to that with a commitment. Some of them with a casual attitude. This is more like, oh, I'm honored and I'm just going to have a fun here, I'm going to meet some nice people. But the commitment to coming there, the commitment to reviewing materials prior to the meeting and taking the job seriously just isn't there. So the symptom of it is there is no quorum at the meeting because other things are higher priorities for them.
Right.
So we need to look after that, making sure that when someone is considered for a committee, a citizen participant, we want to tell them in advance, or check with them in advance, saying this is how much time is required. This is how often meetings are held. We know that you're doing it as a volunteer, and we appreciate that very much, but are you able to dedicate the time and the commitment, the reading prior to the meeting? Are you able to give it the commitment that it needs?
Yeah.
I think we need to ask that before we choose someone for the position.
Well, and I think, Ellie, your comment is equally relevant to council. How many councillors get elected and don't realize, and they may be there in body but not mind.
Exactly. Or they don't do the preparation for meetings.
Yeah, yeah,
So now that's
yeah.
a big one. I mean, so, you know what? This is the idea. If we hark back to the concept of knowledge, what we need to have is a level playing field, which means that at the time of voting, all the voting members have roughly the same knowledge base in their heads. And I can't tell you how often I hear those comments when individuals say to me, it seems to me that Councillor so-and-so is so immersed in this, much more so than I am, maybe he or she has access to staff members, used to be a staff member, so he goes and talks to them. And the result of it, I come to a meeting and I feel like I'm a second-class citizen.
Right.
And so I end up voting, oh, okay, I'll vote like him, but not with the confidence of I'm voting with knowledge in my head.
Almost
so,
a suspicion.
So it has to, exactly. So it has to be a commitment to make sure that the knowledge base is level.
I want to go.
Otherwise, it's the same vote.
Yeah.
Sometimes joke about it in this way and say, if suppose we had a mathematical way of allocating not one vote per person, but a fraction of a vote, depending on how much knowledge they have in their head.
Yeah.
So if someone did not prepare at all, they get 0 votes.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not possible.
Yeah.
But it just shows you, well, sometimes those votes are cast. And in British Columbia, we have this reality where if people abstain, it ends up being a positive vote, which is, in my view, not very good. I don't think it's a good idea, but it ends up being a positive vote. But is that vote, does it have the backbone, does it have the foundation of good knowledge? And often it doesn't. So
we've got these 4 thoughts. I want to go now. What we're seeing across the country is a proliferation of legislation requiring councils now to have a code of conduct. Because we're speaking to the good behavior, but also we're seeing a huge amount of incivility. And I'm not talking about ethics, conflict of interest. I'm talking about behavior. Thoughts on code of conduct and things like code of conduct commissioners, and where do you think we're going with that?
I have two ways of looking at it. one of them is to waive some kind of a penalty and saying if you don't do X, Y, Z, you get to be punished in some way. Or in some instances, they've put in motions of censure if
Right.
someone behaved in the way. Let's say someone went to the media and began to attack
Right.
their colleagues, and that's outside the code of conduct, saying the code of conduct is this. If you come to a meeting, it's okay for you to have a different point of view. Your duty is to present your concern, and then at the end, once all the information, to vote. And if that process has gone through, then your duty is to accept the decision and move on. But some people don't do that, and so in those cases, trust is suffering. So, is there a need to censure them? My thinking is this: that looking at the punitive measure is one way. I'd rather create as much incentive, positive incentive, for people to perform correctly, process-wise. So one thought I would have is if you have a list of affirmations, probably one of them should be, my job is to, if I have a dissenting view, my job is to share it. My job is also to listen to the others and to vote according to my understanding when it comes to voting. But if I was outnumbered and I did not prevail, my job is to accept it and move on. That's one of the things code-wise. I think in relation to staff, and that's one of the places where it's really sad, when it's like you don't like the message, you shoot the messenger. Unfortunately happens, and that's a good recipe to lose good staff members. That's a good recipe to be accused of bullying and harassment of good staff. That's a good recipe for having people move on and maybe turn around and sue.
Right.
And so go your tax dollars. And I'm sure elected officials would care about that. So my thinking is this: let's make sure people do things because they want to achieve something rather than avoid being criticized.
Yeah.
So if people own that, they own the notions of respect, while disagreement is fine, including the staff in that picture, including their colleagues, then they will do it because they want to.
Yeah.
And maybe the ultimate is this: if the community knew that standard, and the community held the elected officials to account according to that standard, which would be prominently displayed on the website, which would be shared and maybe stated by the mayor at the beginning of every meeting, at least the essential ingredients of it, the likelihood of people breaking it would be smaller.
Well, and I think your message is so important because we just nationally see diminishing public confidence in council, and I think some very powerful messages. Thanks, Ellie.
Yeah, it's good to stay on the positive, the thing that you want to achieve, and of course the things that you want to prevent, but I think the driver should be what we want to achieve.
Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you.